Okay, so this is another demonstrative problem on the CVP analysis. So let us say, Econ Company makes calculators that sell for 20 pesos each. For the coming year, management expects fixed cost to total 220,000 and variable cost to be 9 pesos per unit. So based on the problem, we have very evident three figures na given. The 20 pesos, the 220 pesos, 220,000 rather, and the 9 pesos. 20 pesos is the selling price. 220,000 is the fixed cost. And the 9 pesos per unit is the variable cost per unit. So let us say we are asked to compute for the break-even point in terms of units, pero pinapakompute sa atin gamit ang mathematical equation. Okay, by the way, yung break-even points natin, pwede natin siyang ma-compute gamit ang mathematical equation, pwedeng gamit ang contribution margin equation, or yung paggamit ng contribution margin, at pwede rin naman na ma-derive yun kapag gumagamit tayo ng CVP graph. For this particular problem, mathematical equation daw yung ating gamitin. Okay? So, paano po yung mathematical equation? So, ang mathematical equation, ganito lang yun. Dahil equation yan, dapat meron tayong formula. So, yung formula natin, ang sales daw is equal doon sa pinagsama-samang variable cost at fixed cost at yung net income. Okay. So, ang hinahanap natin, break-even point in terms of units. So, therefore, ang hinahanap natin, quantity. So, paano po natin isa-substitute ito? Yung sales natin, selling price natin na 20 pesos. Times X. Hinahanap natin yung BEP units. Okay? Yung variable cost natin, 9 pesos ng X yun. And then, yung ating fixed cost, it's given. 220,000 pesos. In this case, ang net income natin, although it's not given, it is 0. Kasi break-even point tayo. Sabi natin sa break-even point, this is the level of sale na wala kang kinita, hindi ka rin naman nalugi. So, therefore, your net income is 0 here. Okay, and then we do our math na. So, dito, that's 20x minus 9x is equal to 220,000. And then we have here 11x is equal to 220,000. And therefore, x is how much? 220,000 divided by 11, which is 20,000 units. So, therefore, our BEP or break-even point in terms of units is 20,000. If we follow the mathematical equation. Okay? So, let's have our second question. Let us say, ang pinapahanap naman sa'yo, BE point din, pero in terms of peso. Pinapagamit natin, contribution margin naman. Okay, so paano naman yon? Pag contribution margin naman, ang ating tinitingnan, so balik dun sa formula na fixed cost, kuhain mo yung total fixed cost, at i-divide mo siya sa contribution margin ratio. Okay, bakit? Kasi peso yung hinahanap. Kung BEP in terms of units, contribution margin per unit yan. Pero dahil peso value yung hinahanap, contribution margin ratio. Okay? So, identified naman natin ang ating fixed cost na 220,000, pero let's compute first muna kung ano yung ating CM ratio. So, paano ba kinukompute yung ating CM ratio? Okay? Paano kinukompute yon? Hanapin natin kung magkano yung contribution margin. So, paano kinukuha ang contribution margin? You will get your selling price, you'll identify your variable cost, and the difference is contribution margin. Yung selling price natin based on our problem, that's 20. Our variable cost, that is 9 pesos. Therefore, our contribution margin is 11 pesos. And when we convert it or we compute it in terms of percentage or in terms of ratio, 20 is 100%. If you do your math, 9 is 45% and 11 is 55%. So, therefore, our contribution margin ratio is 55%. Alright, and when we compute for the, or when we go back to our problem, computation of the BEP in pesos, so substitute lang natin. Yung fixed cost natin, 220,000, and then you divide it by 55%. If you do your math, your answer will be 400,000 pesos. Okay, so that is the computation of the BEP in terms of peso sales. Let's try another question. So, halimbawa naman po, ang pinapahanap sa atin, margin of safety. Margin of safety percentage. So, paano kinukompute ito? Alamin muna natin, ano ba yung assumed actual sales? So, let us say ang actual sales based sa problem ay sabihin nating 500,000. So, paano makukuha ang margin of safety percentage kung ang ating actual sales ay 500,000? Okay? So, ang margin of safety po, margin of safety ay nakukompute when you actually deduct from the actual sales, ibabawas mo yung BEP sales. That's the margin of safety. Okay? And then, since percentage yung kinukuha natin, i-divide natin siya sa actual sales. So, with that, our figures, the assumed actual sales, ibabawas natin ng break-even point. Break-even point is here. That's 400,000. Computed natin kanina yung number 2. And then you divide it by 500,000, which will give you a 20% margin of safety percentage. Okay? Ay, paano naman po kung ang tanong, pinapahanap sa'yo kung ilan kaya yung sales na kailangan nating maibenta or mabenta kung peso value yung pinag-uusapan, if we have a target income of na 165,000. Okay. Ang hinahanap, sales required in peso, kung ang target income mo ay 165,000. So, dito, pwede ka ulit gumamit ng atin ng mathematical equation. So, sa mathematical equation natin, we have your sales, and then variable cost, fixed cost, and then net income. So, yung sales natin, we have the same data naman, 20 pesos ang selling price, hanapin mo yung quantity na kailangan nating mabenta. Yung variable cost natin, 9 din yan, yung quantity. Yung fixed cost natin, 220,000 yan, based on our given. And, yung ating net income, kung kanina, 0 yan, kasi break-even point naman yung tinitingnan, ngayon, meron ka ng target income na 165,000. So, yung 165,000, gagamitin mo na dito. And then, you'll do the math again. So, that would be 11x, shortcut na natin, 11x, and then 220 plus 165, that would be 385,000. And then, our x will be, if you do the math, our x will be 35,000. But 35,000 is in terms of units. Kasi quantity yung hinanap natin dun sa ating equation. Pero, ang required sa problem, sales in terms of peso. So, what are you going to do? The 35,000 sales will be multiplied by the selling price of 20 pesos, which will give us 700,000 pesos. And that 700,000 is actually the required sales in terms of peso, so that you will be earning a net income of 165,000 pesos. And that's how that's how you solve problem in related to CVP analysis.